This video is a little different from the usual reporting of the council meetings that I've been doing, but it's highlighted a bit of a problem with planning and how it's actually arranged. So I thought this one was worth delving into, and it's actually quite interesting. Now, being honest, it's not a humorous one for me to actually sort of take the mickey out of anybody for doing daft things. And in actual fact, Councillor Pearce deserves a bit of credit here, because he sort of grabbed hold of the meeting and sort of organised things. And I actually thought he did a pretty good job of sort of turning what could have been something quite unpleasant into something that I think had a sensible outcome. I'll explain. Now, if you don't know much about planning, the way it works in our area is that the actual authority, the people who have the power to say yes or no to a planning application, is East Suffolk Council. That's what they do. But as part of that process, they consult loads of other people. I mean, Suffolk Highways, in case there's a problem with road access, or the heritage people if there's a possibility something wants knocking down that's really valuable or worth preserving, that sort of thing. But routinely they come to Lowestoft Town Council and they get their opinion. In their terms, they're called consultees. So basically you ask Lowestoft Town Council what they think. They have a meeting about it because they're sort of concentrated on the Lowestoft area. East Suffolk Council, of course, cover a huge area. So Lowestoft Town Council stick their sort of penneth in. So they recommend either acceptance or refusal. So they've got quite a lot of sort of prodding power, but they cannot say for certain, yes, this goes ahead, or no, it doesn't. Their position is that they recommend a course of action to East Suffolk Council. Last night's meeting was a bit different because there were two members of the public present. They're people who actually wanted to convert a property in Crown Street into an HMO, which is all to do with multiple occupation. So I think in this particular case it was for people who are homeless. So the idea being you take an old building, you make it suitable for quite a few people to live in. In this particular case, they wanted it for 8 particular apartments. I mean, they're not big. I mean, I think the chap mentioned there, but 10 metres square. So that's about 10 foot by 10 foot in terms of old-fashioned measurements for a room. So they're not huge properties. But there's quite a lot of them in the building. And in this particular case, they're in little clusters. So you have sort of 3 in this bit, 3 in this bit, 4 in that bit, that sort of thing. Now, when East Suffolk Council asked Lowestoft Town Council their opinion, it was recommended to refuse the application. And I've looked at all of the planning decisions and things, and this one's a little bit weird. And you'll have to forgive me, but this is how councils work. It's not just Lowestoft Council, but it's how the system works. You need a certain number of councillors present to make a decision valid. So you need a quorum. I think in most places it's usually 4 members, something like that. I mean, under certain circumstances, I think some organisations have less, but usually 4 members. The idea is if you don't have 4 people, you haven't got enough of a viewpoint to make a proper decision. So with 4 members, you can make decisions. For this particular planning meeting, it was clear that they didn't have 4, so they were stuck. So the sort of meeting as normal was sort of abandoned. But in local government, there's a thing called delegated powers. So basically, the officials, so the person who's in charge of the council, the chief sort of official, if you like, they've seen enough of these planning decisions to know what the sort of viewpoint is likely to be. They will make the decision on behalf of the councillors. And then they circulate the councillors and tell them what they've said. It's sort of a system that's always worked. Usually for anything absolutely vital, they would try to defer the meeting and do it again. But for this particular one, because very often they're time sensitive. You can't expect someone to wait a few months for a decision. The decision was made under these delegated powers to recommend refusal. And there's a number of reasons on the document. Primarily, they're concerned about it not being right for the area, but they're also concerned about car parking, and they're concerned about cycling. I'm afraid I'm a total anti-cyclist, so that wouldn't worry me. But I do appreciate that a lot of people are pro-cycling. And so one of the things that we do nowadays is make sure people have got provision to store bikes. Makes perfect sense. So it was refused. Now, East Suffolk Council can actually totally disregard that if they want. I mean, maybe they considered that Lowestoft Town Council on occasions might have been a bit heavy-handed or overly lax. It doesn't matter. The East Suffolk Council, the job is to look at what other people are saying, and then their people will make the decision based on the input they get from everybody. Now, in this case, they haven't actually made the decision yet. It's gone on a bit because Lowestoft Town Council suggested refusal as the appropriate thing to do. Now, the people who apply for planning permission are allowed to actually object to that. And what was actually suggested was that they might like to go to the Lowestoft Town Council meeting and put their case. I mean, the councillors might change their mind.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and councillors. My name is Paul England. I'm an architect working for my client here. And we're on I particularly am on a particularly strange mission with this meeting. And thank you for taking us, allowing us to be here this evening. It's in response to an objection that your committee, and I don't think it was a committee at the time, that a decision was made on the 14th of December 2023 to raise an objection to the change of use to a building known as the Crown House in Crown Street West in Lowestoft, from a disused community centre to a series of buildings known as HMOs. I'll come on to those in a moment, incidentally.
Now, what actually happens is really quite interesting, because at first I think I got the impression that, Councillor Pearce, he wasn't the chair, but he was really running the meeting, was a little bit miffed that some decisions had sort of been, perhaps misunderstood as to why they did it. There was a little bit of argy-bargy.
Yeah, could I just make a comment there that our clerk wouldn't unilaterally make a recommendation if there was a time-sensitive application where either the meeting wasn't quorate or a decision was required before the next scheduled meeting. Then the decision is taken under delegation. The clerk will email planning members who will have their input, and then she will pull those together to inform her recommendation.
Well, I'm not here to argue about that. You know best about your procedures. I don't. I'm brand new to this.
But nothing major. No, nothing major considering how it often is in Lowestoft Town Council. But then it became obvious that the people had actually got a point, because what was brought up was another application made for a different part of Lowestoft. Very similar sort of premises. And on that occasion, Lowestoft Town Council recommended it. Yet it had the same parking problems, and it also had a lack of space for cycles. That property was number 7 Beach Road. You can look it up. It's a bit difficult to find it, but it is on the system. I did find it in the end. And the recommendation for Beach Road, in that case, was approval. The company who were doing the Crown Street development also have a property in Beach Road, and that one has been suggested as a refusal. So, in the space of 3 months, the council's stance for the same sort of property seems to have changed. So something's gone a bit wrong. Now, I have to give him his due here, because Councillor Pearce realised there was a problem, and listening to the two guys making their presentation on why they thought it was unfair, you could see that in actual fact he said, you know, this isn't right, is it? So what we need to do is give us a couple of weeks. We'll actually get council members, you know, we'll actually get a meeting when we can all chat about this, consider the two previous applications that we've sort of given conflicting sort of recommendations on, and see what we can do. So, you know, I think Councillor Pearce is not in a position to overturn the decision there and then, but he was pretty receptive to giving these people a fair hearing.
I hear you on Beach Road. I said I can distinctly remember the discussion about the Crown Street one, which is why I remembered that comment about the 8 to 6. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I don't actually remember offhand the details of the Beach Road one. So, but I would agree. If you have two like-for-like things and you get inconsistent decisions, that's a concern, and we need to look at that. But can I just ask, do you know offhand the other one, when you say that was approved, do you know what the difference was? Were they like different years? I'm just thinking of the composition of this planning committee, whether it's different people with different views. I would also like to look at the documents for that and the one for the earlier application. So if we were to take it away and look at that and come in, do we have a date where we can give a considered response? So can I make a proposal? Because I was initially thinking if it was only a short extension, it would have to be under the standing delegation. But obviously, given the first one was made under delegation, I think we should make it in committee. And then if the gentlemen want to come back or at least watch it, they have the opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. So could we inform the Primary Planning Authority that we've taken the representations under consideration on one of the, we hadn't actually received ahead of this meeting the written response there. So although it's been read out to verbally as to today, we'd not previously had sight of that. So we would like to reconsider our recommendations on both formally at the next planning meeting in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, so I'm halfway through an email to Ben now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that would be my proposal.
Just for reference, the comments that were read tonight were provided and they are on the bottom of the meeting paper. Just need to scroll down a bit further.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a week ago in the agenda one.
Yeah.
So not at the time they were made.
No, oh gosh, no. Okay. So these will both be revisited on the 23rd of May. You're welcome to attend if you wish.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think he needs to be commended for that, because, you know, there were, 4 or 5 councillors present, and I don't think they expected this. And Councillor Pearce did okay, I thought. A bit of a tricky sort of thing to be in when clearly you realise that your particular planning committee have made possibly some rather strange decisions. And no doubt they'll all have a chat, sort it out, and it will be done fairly amicably, because there are rules, and somewhere along the line the rule has got sort of shifted from being positive to negative. And I suppose they'll just revisit the rule and see what they can do about it. So it's a sort of watch this space thing. My guess is there's lots of thinking going on behind the scenes now to try and stop this sort of thing happening again. But that's nice, and that's how it should be. Look after yourselves. See you on the next one. Take care.